Put their bags outside, lock the door, and don't let anyone in this building make their problem ours. Harold Pike said it loudly enough for every apartment on the third floor to hear. A small gray suitcase struck the wet concrete walkway, tipped sideways, and spilled a child's red sweater into the rain. Claire Bennett stood beneath the narrow awning with one arm around her 8-year-old son, Noah, while cold water ran from her hair to the collar of her coat. My payment cleared yesterday. Not according to the fraud notice. Then let me call the bank. You can call from somewhere else. Harold turned the key, tested the lock twice, and slipped it into his pocket. Behind nearby curtains, shadows moved. Doors opened an inch, then quietly closed again. One woman from the school pickup line recognized Claire, whispered something to her husband, and pulled her daughter away as if misfortune could spread through the air. The hallway smelled of wet carpet, old paint, and someone's dinner cooling behind a locked door. Noah stared at the sweater in the puddle. He did not cry. Children sometimes become very quiet when they believe crying might make adults send them away faster. That was when Ethan Cole came up the stairs carrying a canvas tool bag in one hand and a paper sack of groceries in the other. His work jacket was dark with rain, and a faded electrical contractor's patch clung to one shoulder. He paused when he saw the suitcase, the boy, and Harold blocking the door. What happened? Nothing that concerns you, Harold said. They've been removed. Claire lifted her chin. We were paying for the room by the week. Your card was flagged, and management has rules. Management is you. Harold's smile stayed polite. Rules protect everyone. Ethan looked at Noah's trembling hands. Then he looked at the red sweater soaking in the puddle. It's 43 degrees out. Then they should find shelter quickly. Harold stepped closer and lowered his voice. Cole, you're already 3 days late on rent. Don't turn someone else's trouble into your own. Ethan said nothing. He set down his groceries, picked up the sweater, and squeezed the rainwater from it without twisting the fabric. Then he handed it to Noah. Hold this against your chest. It'll block some wind. Claire watched him carefully. We don't need charity. Good, Ethan said. I don't have much. His apartment door opened behind him, and 9-year-old Lily appeared in mismatched socks. Warm yellow light spilled around her into the gray hallway. She looked at Noah, then at the small table inside, where 3 bowls had been set beside a steaming pot. Without asking a question, Lily walked back to the table and dragged out the chair that usually stayed against the wall. Its wooden legs scraped softly across the floor. Harold exhaled. This is exactly the kind of situation that gets people evicted. Ethan picked up the suitcase. Then put that in writing. Harold's jaw tightened, but his voice remained pleasant. I'm trying to help you avoid a mistake. Ethan met his eyes. No. You're trying to make kindness feel expensive. Inside the apartment, the air smelled of chicken soup, black pepper, and warm bread. The place was small enough that 5 steps carried Ethan from the door to the kitchen. Claire remained near the entrance, still measuring every object and every expression as though generosity always arrived with hidden terms. Noah could not stop staring at the pot. Lily noticed. Dad, his bowl should be the blue one. It holds more. Ethan divided the soup into 5 servings. There was 1 piece of chicken left at the bottom of the pot. He placed it in Noah's bowl. Claire reached into her coat pocket. I don't have cash. Ethan set her bowl down. It's dinner, not an invoice. You don't even know us. I know he's cold. Lily frowned at Claire's serving. Her bowl has less than mine. Ethan added another ladle. In this house, guests don't eat what's left over. Claire's expression shifted, but only slightly. Not trust. Not yet. Something closer to confusion. She placed a soaked gray document bag beside the radiator. Ethan heard a faint electronic click from inside it. He glanced down as a scorched power adapter rolled halfway out, attached to a small conference recorder with a cracked indicator light. That shouldn't be near heat, he said. He moved it carefully onto a dry towel without opening it. The lights flickered once, twice, a third time. The recorder suddenly came alive, releasing a burst of static and a man's broken voice. Push the list before Monday. Bennett cannot be allowed to. Claire snatched the device from the table. Her face lost what little color remained. Then 3 knocks sounded at the door. Slow, even, deliberate. Ethan looked through the peephole. 3 people in expensive raincoats stood beneath the hallway light, and the woman in front held up an identification card bearing the silver logo of Meridian Grid Systems. "Claire Bennett," she called through the door. "We know you're in there." Ethan kept one hand on the doorknob and looked back at Claire. "Do you know them?" Claire did not answer immediately. Noah sat at the table with both hands wrapped around the blue bowl, while Lily watched the door with wide, uncertain eyes. The recorder lay silent on the towel, but the broken sentence still seemed to hang in the room. "2 of them," Claire said at last. "I know 2 of them. And the 3rd. I know her well enough to be worried." Another knock sounded. 3 measured taps. "Miss Bennett," the woman outside said. "My name is Evelyn Ross. I am chair of the Ethics Committee at Meridian. Daniel Cho and Margaret Sloan are with me. We need to confirm that you and your son are safe." Ethan looked through the peephole again. The woman in front stood perfectly still. The man beside her held a phone at chest level, checking the screen every few seconds. The 3rd woman kept glancing toward the elevator. "Show your identification cards to the camera," Ethan said through the door. There was a pause. "Excuse me." "One at a time. Name and title facing the lens." Daniel Cho stepped forward first. "That is reasonable." He held his badge beneath the porch camera. Evelyn followed. Margaret hesitated before doing the same. Ethan recorded each card on his phone, then unlocked the deadbolt but kept the chain in place. "You can speak from there." Evelyn studied him through the narrow opening. "And you are the person whose apartment you are standing outside. We are not here to cause trouble. People usually say that after trouble arrives." Daniel leaned closer without touching the door. "Miss Bennett's company device transmitted a location signal from this building 8 minutes ago. We came because she disappeared after leaving headquarters." Claire stepped into view. "I did not disappear. My access was shut off. My company card was frozen, and my room was canceled." Evelyn's face tightened. "We did not authorize that." Margaret spoke quickly. "The important thing is that we found you." Claire looked directly at her. "How?" Daniel just explained. "No," he said, "a device sent a signal." He did not say which device. Margaret's gaze moved toward the kitchen table. The conference recorder. The room became still. Ethan did not move, but Daniel's eyes sharpened. Claire had never mentioned the recorder. Ethan opened the door 2 more inches. "How did you know what was in the bag?" Margaret recovered quickly. "Security informed us." "Security told you before the signal?" Daniel asked. "Or after?" "I do not remember the exact sequence." Ethan glanced toward the scorched adapter. The casing had 2 different kinds of screws, one Phillips head and one small torque screw. A clean line of solder showed beneath the burn mark, newer than the dust around it. "Who repaired this?" he asked. Claire shook her head. "No one." It came straight from the executive conference room. Ethan took a clear food storage bag from a drawer and carefully slid the adapter inside without touching the exposed metal. He photographed the device from both sides. Evelyn watched him. "What are you seeing?" "The housing was opened. Those screws do not match. This solder is recent." "That does not prove tampering," she said. "No," Ethan replied. "It proves someone opened it. Tampering comes later, after someone qualified checks it." Claire looked at him for the first time without suspicion. Not with trust yet, but with attention. Daniel stepped closer to the doorway. "The recorder only transmits when connected to power. Was it plugged in?" "No," Claire said. Ethan thought about the flickering lights and the faint click before the recorder activated. The adapter touched the warm outlet strip. "When I moved it away from the radiator, just for a second." Daniel checked his phone. "That would explain the location signal." Ethan looked at the bag again. "Or trigger it." Margaret folded her arms. "You are making assumptions." "I am separating assumptions from facts," Ethan said. That is why nobody touches this. Evelyn nodded once. Fair. Then Daniel's phone vibrated. He read the message and the color drained from his face. What is it? Claire asked. Daniel turned the screen toward Evelyn. The message contained only one sentence. Victor Hale knows we found her. At that exact moment, the elevator bell sounded at the end of the hallway. Margaret looked away too quickly. Footsteps approached across the wet carpet, calm and unhurried. A man in a dark overcoat appeared beneath the hallway light, accompanied by 2 corporate security employees. He wore no anger on his face, only concern polished smooth enough for a boardroom. Claire, Victor Hale said softly. Everyone has been terribly worried about you. Victor Hale stopped several feet from the apartment door, careful not to crowd the narrow hallway. Rain still clung to the shoulders of his overcoat, but everything else about him looked perfectly controlled. His polished shoes reflected the hallway light, and the gentle smile on his face never seemed to change. Claire, he said again, please come with us. Everyone at Meridian is concerned about your well-being. Claire did not move. Noah quietly lowered his spoon into the bowl, suddenly no longer hungry. Lily looked from Ethan to the strangers, sensing that every adult in the hallway was saying one thing while meaning something else. Ethan left the apartment door open just enough to keep everyone in view. She is staying here until she decides otherwise, he said calmly. Victor finally noticed Ethan. And you are Ethan Cole. Victor nodded as if searching through an invisible file cabinet. Of course, facilities maintenance, electrical contractor. You worked for Meridian several years ago. Ethan answered without emotion. For a while. I remember your name. Victor smiled politely. I was disappointed when your employment ended. Claire slowly turned toward Ethan. She had never asked why he no longer worked for Meridian. Victor continued before anyone else could speak. Unfortunately, some employees struggle to adapt to changing standards. Ethan met his eyes. That is one way to describe it. Victor folded his hands. I understand this situation must feel confusing. Claire has experienced extraordinary stress during the past week. She has not been making decisions that reflect her usual judgment. We simply want to bring her somewhere safe. Evelyn Ross looked toward Victor. She appears capable of making her own decisions. Of course, Victor replied smoothly, which is exactly why I am here to give her every available option. He reached into his briefcase and removed a neatly organized folder. This is a recommendation from the company physician suggesting immediate evaluation after several concerning incidents. Claire did not even glance at the papers. I have never met that physician. Victor answered gently. Your executive wellness program includes consultations based upon reports from senior leadership. Ethan accepted the folder without comment. He did not argue. He simply opened it on the kitchen counter beneath the brightest light in the apartment. The pages appeared official. The signatures looked professional. Yet something immediately felt wrong. He checked the digital timestamp printed near the bottom of the first page, then the authorization code on the second. His expression remained calm. Where did this come from? Victor answered without hesitation. Human Resources received it less than an hour ago. Ethan looked at Evelyn instead of Victor. May I borrow your phone? She handed it over. Ethan searched for the public number of the medical group listed on the document instead of calling the number printed on the page itself. After a brief conversation, he thanked the receptionist and returned the phone. They have no physician by this name, Ethan said quietly.
Daniel cho Frau Wen.
Are you certain? Ethan nodded. The clinic exists. The doctor does not. Victor gave a patient smile. Administrative errors happen all the time. Ethan flipped back to the first page. This recommendation was supposedly created at 9:42 tonight. He pointed to the electronic signature. The signature certificate says it was approved at 9:18. The signature happened 24 minutes before the document existed. Silence settled over the apartment. Claire watched Ethan carefully, saying nothing. Victor remained composed. Technical systems occasionally generate unusual timestamps. Daniel held out his hand. May I see that? He studied the document for several seconds before looking at Victor. I would like an explanation. Victor ignored the question and turned back toward Ethan. Mr. Cole, I understand you are trying to help. Meridian appreciates loyal people. You are raising a daughter alone, are you not? Ethan did not answer. Your landlord informed us you have fallen behind on rent. That is difficult. Nobody should have to carry that burden. Harold, standing halfway down the hallway, suddenly looked at the floor. Victor continued in the same calm voice. The company would be happy to pay your remaining balance, arrange a larger apartment, and reconnect you with contract opportunities. All we ask is that you allow us to recover company property and let Claire receive proper care. Claire closed her eyes for only a moment. She knew exactly what was happening. Ethan looked toward Lily. She was quietly collecting empty soup bowls, pretending not to listen because she knew the adults were worried. He turned back to Victor. People who want to help usually ask what someone needs. His voice stayed soft. You only keep telling us what you want. Victor's smile faded for the first time. Think carefully, Mr. Cole. Ethan placed the folder back into Victor's hands. My daughter is watching. That makes the decision simple. Victor accepted the papers without another word. Before leaving, however, his eyes drifted toward the clear storage bag containing the scorched power adapter. That damaged device is dangerous, he said. If I were you, I would throw it away before someone gets hurt. Victor turned and walked toward the elevator with the 2 security employees following behind him. No one spoke until the elevator doors finally closed. Ethan remained still for several seconds, then quietly walked to the apartment's electrical panel near the kitchen. Something about Victor's warning bothered him. He removed the metal cover with a screwdriver from his tool bag and aimed a flashlight inside. One neutral wire had fresh tool marks across its insulation, and the terminal screw had been loosened just enough to create an unstable connection. Ethan slowly exhaled. This did not happen by accident, he said. Claire stepped beside him. Can you tell when it was done? Ethan looked at the bright scrape marks on the metal. Recently, whoever touched this knew exactly which wire would create a power surge without shutting off the whole apartment. Claire stared at the damaged connection, then at the scorched adapter resting on the table. For the first time that night, she realized someone had not merely been searching for her. Someone had expected that recorder to die the moment it touched the wall. No one spoke for several long seconds after Ethan closed the electrical panel. The only sound inside the apartment was the steady rain against the kitchen window and the quiet clink of Lily stacking empty bowls in the sink. Claire stared at the loosened neutral wire as though it had answered a question she had been asking herself for days. Someone expected the recorder to fail, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Not just fail. Fail in a way that looked accidental. Evelyn Ross stepped closer without crossing the small strip of masking tape Ethan had placed on the floor around the open panel. Can you prove that? Not by myself, Ethan answered. But I can show what does not belong here. He pointed his flashlight toward the terminal screw. Fresh scrape marks cut through the dull finish of the metal, brighter than everything around them. These marks were made recently. The insulation is compressed from a different screwdriver than the one used during installation. Whoever touched this knew enough to create an unstable connection without shutting off power to the apartment. Daniel Cho knelt beside him. Could normal wear do that? Ethan shook his head. Normal wear leaves heat damage. This leaves. Attention. Claire looked toward the scorched power adapter resting inside the clear storage bag. If the surge happened exactly when the recorder connected to power, the memory could have been destroyed, Ethan finished. But something interrupted the sequence. He picked up the bag carefully, holding it only by the plastic edges. The outlet strip I use has built-in surge protection. It reduced the voltage long enough for the recorder to survive. Evelyn folded her arms. Luck! Ethan gave a small smile. Preparation. I repaired the strip last winter instead of throwing it away. Daniel studied the adapter through the plastic. Can we open it? Yes, Ethan replied. But not until every step is documented. He cleared a section of the kitchen table, laid down a clean white towel, and positioned his phone above it using a coffee mug and a roll of electrical tape to keep the camera steady. Everything stays on video from this point forward. Claire watched every movement. She had spent years inside executive boardrooms where people trusted polished presentations. This felt different. Here, every small action mattered because no one expected the truth to defend itself. Ethan photographed both sides of the adapter, then the recorder, then each screw before touching anything. If someone asks later whether we changed something, the answer will already be in these pictures. Evelyn nodded almost imperceptibly. Continue. Ethan removed the first screw, then the second. Daniel frowned immediately. Those are not even the same type. Exactly, Ethan said. He lifted the cover slowly. Inside, beside the damaged circuit board, sat a tiny transmitter no larger than a postage stamp. A thin wire had been soldered across the original connection. Claire inhaled sharply. That was never part of the recorder. Ethan angled the flashlight. Neither was this replacement fuse. Daniel leaned closer. What is wrong with it? It is rated too high. Under normal conditions it works. During a surge it delays failure just long enough for sensitive components to absorb the damage. Evelyn looked from the transmitter to the recorder. Meaning someone wanted the recorder to reveal its location before destroying itself. That is my opinion, Ethan answered carefully. A forensic electronics specialist should verify it independently. Daniel immediately reached for his phone. I know one who has worked with our audit committee. Claire remained silent, but something in her expression changed. She no longer saw Ethan as a stranger offering shelter. She saw someone protecting facts even when they did not yet favor anyone. Harold suddenly appeared outside the still open apartment door. I heard you took something apart, he said nervously. You cannot damage building property. Ethan looked up. This is not your property. Harold shifted his weight. I was only checking because the security camera in the lobby stopped recording for about 30 minutes tonight. Daniel looked at him. Stopped recording? Harold nodded too quickly. Technical problem. Ethan walked to the doorway. What time? Around 8:40. Claire's eyes narrowed. That was less than an hour before she arrived. Ethan glanced toward the hallway window. Interesting. Why? Harold asked. Ethan pointed toward the apartment across the hall. Its decorative glass panel reflected part of the lobby entrance whenever someone walked through. Because your camera may have gone dark, Ethan said quietly, but reflections do not know they are supposed to disappear. Harold's face lost color for only a moment before he forced a smile. You are reading too much into this. He turned and hurried back toward the stairwell instead of waiting for the elevator. Daniel watched him leave. He seems anxious. People usually become anxious, Ethan replied, when they start realizing that missing footage is not the same thing as missing truth. At that exact moment the recorder, still lying open on the towel, released another faint burst of static. Everyone froze. A fragmented voice pushed through the interference, clearer than before. Shaw will change the file. Cole has already been removed. He cannot stop us now. Ethan did not speak. He simply stared at the recorder while the room fell completely silent, because for the first time that night, his own name had become part of the evidence. The apartment seemed smaller after Ethan heard his own name inside the damaged recorder. Nobody rushed to speak. Nobody tried to explain it away. Daniel slowly replayed the fragment, but the result was the same. Static, a broken sentence, then two unmistakable words. Shaw, Cole. Claire finally broke the silence. Who is Shaw? Ethan kept his eyes on the recorder. Martin Shaw. He managed the maintenance division when I worked for Meridian. Was he the one who fired you? Ethan nodded once. He signed the paperwork. Noah had fallen asleep against the kitchen wall with his empty bowl resting beside him. Lily quietly placed a folded blanket over both children before returning to the table. She did not ask questions. She simply looked at her father, waiting to see whether his face would change. It did not. Ethan picked up his phone and scrolled through an old contact list that he had not opened in years. Martin Shaw's number was still there. His thumb hovered over the call button for several seconds before he pressed it. The call rang 6 times before a tired voice answered. "Who is this?" "Ethan Cole." Silence filled the line. "It is late, Ethan. I know. I do not have anything to say." Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter. "I am not calling to argue about the past." "Then why are you calling?" Ethan looked at the recorder on the towel. "Because I just heard your name on a recording that should not exist." The silence returned, longer this time. Finally Martin spoke in a lower voice. "Where are you?" Ethan glanced at Claire. "Somewhere quiet. Not over the phone." "Then tell me where." Martin hesitated before giving the name of a 24-hour diner a few miles away. 30 minutes, he said. "Come alone." The line disconnected. Daniel looked up. "Do you trust him?" Ethan answered honestly. "No. But I trust the way people sound when they are frightened." Claire folded her arms. "You should not go by yourself." "I will not." Evelyn spoke before anyone else could. "Daniel and I will follow separately. We stay out of sight unless something goes wrong." Claire looked at Noah sleeping peacefully beneath Lily's blanket. "I cannot leave him." Lily smiled shyly. "He can stay here. We have an extra pillow." Claire's eyes softened for only a moment. "Thank you." Ethan picked up his jacket. Before reaching the door, he stopped beside Claire. "There is something you should know." She waited. "When Martin fired me, he told me to sign a safety inspection for an electrical cabinet that I knew was not ready. I refused." Claire frowned. "What happened?" "The report changed after I left his office." Daniel looked surprised. "Changed how?" "It suddenly said I had performance issues instead of a safety dispute." Claire lowered her voice. "Why did you never challenge it?" Ethan smiled without bitterness. "Because I was busy raising a little girl who had just lost her mother. Courtrooms cost money. Groceries did too." Claire looked down at the worn kitchen floor. The company she had built to improve people's lives had quietly buried someone whose only mistake was refusing to sign something unsafe. "If what happened to you is true," she said softly, "then I failed people long before tonight." Ethan shook his head. "Do not apologize yet. First find out whether it is true." 40 minutes later, the old diner glowed beneath a flickering neon sign, while rain continued to fall across the empty parking lot. Martin Shaw was already sitting alone in a corner booth with untouched coffee growing cold in front of him. His shoulders looked heavier than Ethan remembered. As Ethan approached, Martin did not offer a handshake. He reached into a weathered envelope and slid a single folded document across the table. "Before you say anything," Martin whispered, "look at the date." Ethan unfolded the paper. It was his original performance review. The word safety concern had been crossed out electronically and replaced with failure to cooperate with management directives. Martin closed his eyes. "I signed one report," he admitted quietly. "The system filed another." Ethan looked up but did not accuse him. "Who changed it?" Martin swallowed hard. "I was told not to ask." His phone vibrated on the table. A new message appeared across the screen before he could hide it. Neither man touched the device. The words were short, cold, and impossible to misunderstand. "We know you are with Cole. Think about your daughter before you speak another word." Martin stared at the message until the screen went dark. He did not reach for his coffee. He did not look toward the windows. He simply sat there with both hands resting on the edge of the booth as though even the smallest movement might make everything worse. Ethan folded the performance review and slid it carefully back across the table. "Keep the original," he said quietly. "You may need it later." Martin looked up in disbelief. "You are not taking it?" "Not yet. If you hand it over now and something happens to you, people will say I pressured you." Martin studied Ethan for a long moment before letting out a slow breath. "You always did think 3 steps ahead." Ethan shook his head. "No. I just learned what happens when evidence only exists in one place." Daniel and Evelyn entered the diner a minute later, choosing a booth several yards away without interrupting the conversation. Claire had remained behind with the children, and before Ethan left the apartment he had watched Lily quietly place another blanket over Noah after the boy rolled onto the couch in his sleep. The image stayed with him now, reminding him exactly what was worth protecting. Martin finally spoke again. Victor never ordered people to lie in front of witnesses. He was smarter than that. He asked questions instead. He would say things like, "How would you describe an employee who refuses management direction?" Then someone else would write the answer he wanted. Ethan listened without interrupting. "When you refused to certify that electrical cabinet, I wrote that you raised a safety concern." Martin swallowed hard. The report came back the next morning with different wording. I complained. "I was told the revision reflected executive review." Daniel quietly activated the voice recorder on his own phone and placed it in plain sight on the table. Martin noticed but did not object. "Did anyone instruct you to change additional employee records?" Daniel asked. Martin nodded slowly. There was always a phrase in the emails. Monday list. If that subject line appeared, everyone understood those files had to be cleaned before the board meeting. Ethan remembered the damaged recorder. The recording mentioned pushing the list before Monday. Martin closed his eyes. Then the recording is real. He reached into his coat and removed a small flash drive attached to an old key ring. "I almost destroyed this 3 times. Ethan did not touch it. "What is on it?" "Draft emails. Nothing classified. They were never sent because I lost my nerve. The system automatically saved copies before I deleted them." Daniel leaned forward. "Do they identify Victor directly?" "Not by full instruction. But one message says, adjust the language to reflect resistance rather than safety objections." That sentence changed everything. Evelyn finally walked over to the booth. "Mr. Shaw, if you cooperate fully, I will recommend formal protection for you as a reporting witness." Martin gave a tired smile. "Protection sounds nice. My daughter has soccer practice tomorrow morning. I would rather she reaches it without someone following her home." Ethan answered before anyone else could. "Then we protect the truth first. Names can wait." Martin looked at him with visible surprise. "You still believe I deserve that?" Ethan's voice remained calm. "I believe your daughter does." Outside, rainwater slid down the diner windows in long silver lines. A black sedan that had been parked across the street for several minutes quietly pulled away without its headlights on. Daniel noticed it but said nothing. Instead, he opened his laptop and compared the dates on Martin's draft emails with the timestamps from the damaged recorder. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every document pointed toward the same Monday meeting. Every revision happened within hours of executive review. Every change transformed technical objections into performance failures. "This is no longer one bad termination," Daniel said softly. "This is a process." Evelyn nodded. "A process designed to survive legal review." Martin's phone vibrated again. This time he did not even look at it. He switched the device completely off and slid it across the table to Ethan. "Keep that with the recorder," he said. "If they already know I am here, hiding will not change anything." Ethan pushed the phone back toward him. "No. You keep your life. We will keep the evidence separate." Martin blinked, almost confused by the answer. Most people would have gathered every piece into one folder. Ethan insisted on the opposite. Before anyone could say another word, Daniel's own phone chimed with an emergency company notification. He read it once, then a second time, his expression growing noticeably more serious. "Victor just sent a company-wide announcement," he said quietly. "He claims Claire Bennett is experiencing a mental health crisis, that confidential information has been stolen, and that all employees must attend an emergency meeting at headquarters in the morning." Evelyn slowly closed her eyes. "He is moving before we are ready." Ethan looked toward the rain outside, then back at the people around the table. "No," he said. "He is moving because he thinks the evidence is already gone." The drive back to the apartment was almost silent. Rain washed across the windshield while the city lights blurred into long streaks of gold and white. Ethan kept both hands on the steering wheel, replaying every detail from the diner in his mind. Martin had not tried to clear his own name. He had only tried to keep his daughter safe. Ethan understood that better than anyone. When they reached the apartment building, the hallway lights were still glowing, but something immediately felt different. A folded notice had been taped across Ethan's door. He read it once without changing his expression. Notice of lease termination. Effective immediately. Violation of occupancy and safety policies. Harold appeared at the end of the hallway almost as if he had been waiting. I did not make the decision, he said quickly. Corporate management sent it. Ethan folded the notice neatly instead of tearing it down. What management company sends eviction papers after midnight? Harold opened his mouth but found no answer. Inside the apartment, Claire looked at the paper and quietly lowered her eyes. Lily had fallen asleep in a chair beside Noah, the two children wrapped in the same blanket, unaware that the adults were standing on ground that seemed to be disappearing beneath them. Claire spoke first. This is because of me. Ethan carefully placed the notice on the kitchen table.
No.
This is because someone believes pressure is cheaper than truth. Evelyn stepped closer. We can move everyone to a hotel tonight. Ethan shook his head. The children need sleep, not another strange room. Daniel opened his laptop again. We have only a few hours before the employee meeting. Whatever we present tomorrow has to survive legal review, public scrutiny, and independent verification. Ethan nodded. Then nothing stays in one place. He placed 3 empty storage containers on the table. Into the first he carefully sealed the damaged recorder and scorched power adapter. Into the second went printed photographs, copies of Martin's draft emails, and the altered performance review. Into the third he saved digital copies onto separate encrypted storage drives that Daniel had brought from his office. One stays with Evelyn, Ethan said. One goes with Daniel. One stays offline with me. Claire watched every movement. You really think they will come after evidence this ordinary? Ethan smiled faintly. People usually ignore ordinary things until ordinary things prove them wrong. Daniel looked at the apartment door. What about the children? Ethan turned toward Lily, gently brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face without waking her. My neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, teaches 2nd grade. She leaves for school before 7. Lily trusts her. Claire looked toward Noah sleeping peacefully beside Lily. He has not smiled once since this afternoon. Ethan answered softly. Tonight he fell asleep warm. Tomorrow we worry about everything else. A quiet knock interrupted the conversation. This time it was not deliberate or intimidating. Mrs. Alvarez stood outside wearing a sweater and holding a thermos. I saw the lights, she whispered. I thought somebody might need coffee. Ethan thanked her and briefly explained that he might need her help with Lily in the morning. She smiled without asking unnecessary questions. Children belong with people who make them feel safe, she said. Bring her over before sunrise. After she left, Claire looked at Ethan with growing respect. You keep finding people willing to help. Ethan poured coffee into paper cups. No. I keep finding people who were already kind. Daniel's phone vibrated once more. He read the newest company message and slowly looked up. Victor has changed tomorrow's schedule. Evelyn frowned. Changed it how? The employee meeting is no longer private. Local business reporters have been invited. He intends to make a public statement before the board meets. Claire understood immediately. He wants to define the story before anyone hears the evidence. Daniel nodded. If he convinces everyone that you are unstable and Ethan stole company information, every fact we present afterward will sound like damage control. Silence settled over the apartment. Rain continued tapping against the window while the kitchen clock moved steadily toward 3 in the morning. Claire finally looked at Ethan. You still have time to walk away. You could protect Lily, find another apartment, and leave this behind. Ethan looked toward his daughter sleeping peacefully beneath the blanket. If I leave because someone threatens my home, he said quietly, then tomorrow they will threaten someone who does not have a camera, a witness, or anyone willing to open a door. Claire lowered her head. realizing that every executive speech she had ever given about integrity sounded small compared to one ordinary sentence spoken in a tiny apartment kitchen. She reached into her coat pocket and removed her company identification badge. For a moment she stared at the silver logo that had once represented everything she had built. Then she placed it face down on the table. "Tomorrow," she said, "I am not fighting to get my office back. I am fighting to make sure no one else loses theirs the way you did." Before anyone could respond, headlights swept across the apartment window. A black sedan slowed in front of the building, remained there for several seconds without anyone stepping out, then quietly drove away. Ethan watched until the taillights disappeared into the rain. "He is not trying to stop us anymore," he said. "He thinks tomorrow morning he can make everyone stop believing us before we even speak." Morning arrived beneath a gray sky that never fully brightened. By 7:30, the glass lobby of Meridian was already crowded with employees, department managers, reporters, and security staff. Large screens displayed the company logo beside a message that read, "Building tomorrow together." Ethan walked through the revolving door carrying nothing that looked important. The damaged recorder rested inside an ordinary lunch cooler, the same one he had once used on maintenance jobs. Daniel carried one sealed evidence case. Evelyn carried another. Claire walked between them wearing the same rain-soaked coat from the night before. She had changed nothing except her determination. Conversations faded as people recognized her. Some looked relieved. Others looked confused. Victor Hale stood on the small presentation stage beneath bright lights with complete confidence. "Good morning," he began. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. Today we face an unfortunate situation involving confidential company information and a valued executive experiencing extraordinary personal stress." His voice remained calm, measured, almost compassionate. Reporters lifted their cameras. Employees exchanged uncertain glances. Victor continued, "Meridian has always believed in supporting people through difficult moments. Unfortunately, company property has been removed without authorization, assisted by a former contractor who left this organization several years ago under documented performance concerns." Ethan watched his own employee photograph appear on the large screen behind Victor. The picture had been taken years earlier, before gray had begun to appear at his temples. A quiet murmur moved across the crowd. Some people recognized him. Others simply accepted the story they had been given. Claire remained silent. She had promised herself not to interrupt. Truth did not need to arrive first. It only needed to arrive complete. Victor extended one hand toward Ethan. "Mr. Cole, if you return the recorder now, Meridian will consider this misunderstanding resolved." Ethan answered without raising his voice. "Before anyone hands over anything, I have one request." Victor smiled politely. "Of course. Show everyone the original system access records you used to accuse me." Victor nodded toward the technology team. Within seconds, a screen filled with login records bearing Ethan's former employee identification number. Victor pointed toward the highlighted entry. "As you can see, Mr. Cole accessed restricted internal files after his employment ended." Several reporters immediately began typing. Daniel slowly stepped forward. "Please enlarge the timestamp." The technician complied. Daniel looked toward the audience instead of Victor. Meridian servers permanently record activity in coordinated universal time. These records are displayed in local time. He paused. "Except this one." The room grew quieter. Daniel pointed to the highlighted entry. "This timestamp has already been converted before export. Someone manually altered the presentation format." Victor answered immediately. "That proves nothing." "Correct," Daniel replied. "By itself, it proves nothing." Evelyn stepped onto the stage beside him. "Which is why we are not presenting one piece of evidence." She placed the first sealed container on the table. Independent examination confirmed that the recorder's power adapter had been opened, modified, fitted with an unauthorized transmitter, and equipped with an incorrect fuse designed to maximize damage during a power surge. A second container followed. Separate examination confirmed unauthorized changes inside Mr. Cole's apartment electrical panel during the same evening. Reporters stopped typing and began listening. Claire finally spoke. The recorder is not our only evidence. Daniel displayed copies of Martin Shaw's draft emails beside Ethan's original performance review. Different sources, different dates, same language. Safety objections became performance failures. Several employees in the audience exchanged uneasy looks. One quietly removed a cardboard box from beneath his chair and set it on the floor. Ethan recognized the expression. It belonged to someone who had once been told that losing a job was somehow his own fault. Victor remained composed. Interesting documents, he said, but still incomplete. Ethan nodded. I agree. He placed the lunch cooler on the table and carefully removed the damaged recorder. That is why I am not asking anyone to believe this recorder by itself. He looked toward the cameras. Last night, when this device briefly regained power inside my apartment, my doorbell camera independently recorded the same interrupted audio that everyone is about to hear. A technician connected the recovered recording. Static filled the lobby. Then a broken voice emerged. Push the Monday list. Bennett cannot be allowed. The sound faded into interference. Victor folded his arms. Static and fragments. That is hardly proof. Ethan calmly reached into the cooler again and removed the scorched power adapter sealed inside its clear evidence bag. No, he said quietly. By itself it is not. But every piece has been telling the same story since last night. At that exact moment, the independent electronics specialist stepped through the lobby doors carrying one final forensic report that no one in the room had seen yet. The independent electronics specialist walked to the front of the lobby carrying a sealed evidence envelope and placed it beside the damaged recorder without saying a dramatic word. He opened the report instead. The modifications inside this power adapter were intentional, he said calmly. The transmitter was added after manufacturing. The replacement fuse was incorrectly rated for the original design. The device was configured to reveal its location when briefly energized and to increase the likelihood of memory damage during a power surge. The lobby became so quiet that the hum of the ceiling ventilation could be heard above the rain outside. Victor Hale kept his expression composed. An interesting technical opinion, he replied. It still does not identify who made those modifications. Correct, Ethan said. That is why we never relied on one piece of evidence. Daniel projected a timeline onto the large screen. The altered performance review. The draft emails saved by Martin Shaw, the modified server log, the interrupted recording, the unauthorized transmitter, the apartment electrical panel, the missing lobby camera footage. Each event stood alone, verified by different people, collected from different places, and connected only by dates, times, and actions. Evelyn stepped forward. Independent facts do not need to know each other to point toward the same conclusion. Martin Shaw slowly rose from the audience. His hands trembled, but his voice did not. My name is Martin Shaw. I signed Ethan Cole's original review because he reported a safety concern. I did not write the version presented during his termination. I also received repeated instructions to replace safety objections with performance language before executive review meetings. A murmur spread through the employees. Several lowered their eyes as though they were remembering conversations they had tried to forget. Victor answered without hesitation. Mr. Shaw is attempting to protect himself. Maybe, Martin admitted, but that does not change the documents. Daniel displayed the preserved draft emails. The subject line appeared again. Monday list. The same phrase recovered from the damaged recorder. Claire finally stepped toward the center of the stage. I opposed a restructuring plan because too many decisions were being justified with records I could no longer trust. That is why my access was revoked. Victor looked toward the reporters. None of this proves I ordered anything. Ethan gently lifted the sealed evidence bag containing the scorched adapter. No, he said, but someone here knows something that has never been made public. He placed the bag back on the table. The recovered recording included only a few damaged words. Nothing more. Victor gave a quiet, confident smile. Exactly, because that recording should have been erased last night. The sentence left his mouth before he could stop it. No one moved. No one spoke. Ethan did not smile. Claire did not celebrate. Evelyn slowly turned toward Victor. "Mr. Hale," she asked evenly, "how do you know the recording was supposed to be erased?" Victor opened his mouth but found no answer that matched the evidence already displayed around him. Reporters stopped typing and simply stared. Daniel lowered his eyes for a moment before closing his laptop. That statement was never disclosed. The silence inside the lobby became heavier than any argument. One employee quietly began to clap, then stopped, realizing this was not a victory worth applauding. It was a moment of accountability. Evelyn addressed the room. Effective immediately, Victor Hale is suspended pending an independent investigation. All restructuring actions are frozen. Every employee review connected to the Monday list process will be reopened. Witness protection procedures will begin today for anyone cooperating with the investigation. Claire looked across the crowd instead of toward the executive offices. "I will only return under one condition," she said. "No person will ever again lose a career because honesty was rewritten into disobedience." The board members nodded one by one. Weeks later, the rain returned to the city, but the little apartment felt warmer than before. Ethan's lease had been restored after the management company admitted its improper notice. He accepted a contract to inspect electrical safety for Meridian's apprenticeship program, but he declined every executive title offered to him. Martin kept his job under strict oversight after fully cooperating, and dozens of employee records entered independent review. On Friday evening, Lily quietly set 4 bowls on the small kitchen table, then paused with a smile before reaching for a 5th. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Claire stood outside with Noah beside her, holding a loaf of fresh bread instead of a briefcase. Noah smiled for the first time since the storm. Lily pulled out the extra chair without saying a word. Ethan ladled soup into every bowl, making sure no one received the smallest serving. Claire looked around the tiny apartment, then at the chair that had once been empty. "You opened your door before you knew who I was," she said softly. Ethan placed the pot back on the stove. "No," he answered. "I opened it because someone needed one." Outside, the rain continued falling across the quiet street, but inside that small apartment there was warmth, dignity, and the simple peace that arrives when kindness is given without expecting a reward and truth is allowed to speak for itself.